Now today's presentation is entitled Beginnings, Middles, and Ends, Motivating and Engaging Your Online Students. Today's presenter is Dr. Paul Beaudoin from Fitchburg State University. Paul is an assistant professor in the Humanities Department specializing in music and art at Fitchburg. He is a frequent international workshop and keynote speaker, so we have quite a treat today that Paul will be speaking to you all. And without further ado, I'm now going to hand it over to Paul as he's going to walk us through beginnings, middles, and ends. Paul?
Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for that introduction. And of course, thanks to Sharon Antes who helped set up this opportunity for me to talk to you all about how to motivate and engage your online students. And also thank you for coming to this workshop because it's a really busy time of year. You know, we've all got final exams, our final lectures, we're grading papers, we're dealing with graduating students. I know that it's really crazy, so I really appreciate your taking the time out of your day to do this. It should be nice for you to know that this is not about the nuts and bolts of how to work with Blackboard. Rather, I'm looking to show you ways to kind of inspire you to think about how you can work with your students to make your online courses really engaging and, of course, really motivating. Before I sort of hop off into the meat and potatoes, let's find out something about you all. And I'm kind of wondering, actually, we know about where to vote, but just as a reminder, here's a little reminder of where we get to vote for the next couple of questions. Do you teach in a face-to-face environment? Is your class a hybrid where sometimes you're meeting face-to-face but you're also meeting online? Or are you fully online but meeting synchronously? In other words, we all meet at one place at one time. Or fully online but asynchronous, meaning students can come in and out of your online environment. So choose what we've got, and in a few minutes, Lauren will let us know how we are doing.
Yes, if everyone would like to take the next 10 to 15 seconds, and then we will publish the results to the whiteboard.
I see a lot of people are doing fully online but asynchronous, which is exactly the environment that I teach in. So let's get some other here. C seems to be the next popular, and a very popular move, I think, for a lot of places that are teaching where online environment is sort of the core of where the class meets. But every once in a while, students and the teacher get to meet up and ask questions and sort of make things really clear. Terrific. All right, so that's good to know. Let's move on to the next question, and that is, my students are most motivated at, well, the beginning of the semester, or just before the midterm when they are getting it, or at the end of the term because it's almost over, or I can't tell when my students are motivated and engaged. When do you find your students most motivated?
So we'll give it another 10 seconds.
Okay, so it seems like at the beginning of the semester, most people are excited about their course. And we'll go with that. All right, the next one. Have you ever made a New Year's resolution? How about yes, and I kept it? Or yes, but it didn't last long? Or what, are you kidding me? We have lots of yes, but it didn't last long. And can you imagine that every time I ask this question, that is the bulk of the answers, yes, but it didn't last long? Think about that just for a moment, because that's often like the beginning of a new semester, right? We're all very motivated. We're all very excited. But as we move forward, you know, I'm too tired today. I'm not in the mood. And you find the million and one excuses to not keep doing what you're doing. And that's kind of what I want us to think about here, because in the beginning it is very easy to get your classes up and running, but how to sustain that takes a little bit more effort. I started to think about this a couple of years back when a dean from a Midwest university called me about my classes. He was actually astonished that all the students in my class had finished, and they had finished on time. And he was a little bit shocked because he told me, you know, Paul, we load all the publisher's cartridges for our classes, but about 67% of our students drop out of the course by midterm. And he said, how do you do it? How do you keep your students going until the end of the semester? And I thought, you know, that's a really good question because everyone has one thing that they can do to make their classes work the best, and that is participate. So if you do nothing else at all, at least participate in the class that you're giving. Don't just upload the publisher's cartridge and let the course sort of run on its own. There's lots of things that students want to know, want to ask, and so what I want to offer you guys are some ideas and some concepts which I hope will inspire you to find ways to motivate and engage your students. But at the very least, participate. Let your students know that you're there and that you are in the class with them. Oftentimes, the online learning environment is new to students. So getting them oriented to the technology, to the Blackboard learning management system can be sort of the first hurdle that many students face. I think it's wonderful to offer my students a how to take this course video tutorial. This, as you can see, I posted up on YouTube, is about a 12-minute video that walks through the student not only the different places in the class where they'll need to go, for example, the course modules, the discussion board, the syllabus area, but it also gives them a sense of what the class is going to be about. It's going to give them a sense of how to navigate around the environment, and it helps them orient to the online world. One of the things I also provide my students once they're in that world is a map to get around it. So I've designed for my class sort of an ancillary to the syllabus, and it's a course map. And in this course map, I give my students all the information that they know to complete a learning unit or a learning module in my case. You can see this page here that they can print out. There's a list of all the lectures and also how long those lectures are. If there's a study guide, I'll let them know, or if there's activities that I'd like them to accomplish. I happen to teach classes that combine music and art appreciation. So if there's specific artists or specific composers, I will list those. But there might be specific things about your class, maybe specific things in biology or in mathematics or in science that you're covering in a learning unit. You might want to load those into your course map so students know, oh, I'm supposed to be learning this. In my classes, I oftentimes have them read artist statements. So if there are any readings, I'll have them posted here. In this very beginning one, there aren't. But if I want them to read a letter by Beethoven, or if I'm interested in having them read something from Voltaire's Candide, I'll have that here so that they know. My classes tend to be very media rich. So anytime I want them to link to a YouTube video or some other place where they're going to watch something, I'll let them know that that is in this module. Lastly, the discussion board. I let them know the kinds of questions I want them to be thinking about when they are engaged in that unit. So in this case, I would want them to know, is it music? And I would post on the discussion board a video or music example where they kind of have to think about whether or not what I've uploaded sort of qualifies as music. And at the very bottom, I really spell it out for them. This is really kind of the course module learning objective. And I think it can be very helpful for a student to know in this unit, these are the things that I'm supposed to be learning. It helps them focus. It helps them keep track of where they are and perhaps even suggest where they might be going. I think one of the most important things about getting an online class started is setting the tone of the class. Well, let's put it this way. First impressions really count, and they count more so in the online environment. The disadvantage to the online environment is that students can't see you. So they don't see your facial expressions, your body motions, your smile, whatever kinds of things you might physically bring. So you kind of have to think about ways to transfer that into your online environment. And one of the ways most people do this is by creating an icebreaker, a nice way of having students not only get to meet you, but also meet each other. Since my class deals again with music and art, I think of these as kind of cultural artifacts. And so what I want them to do for my icebreaker is to create a museum about themselves. What would they want people to know about their lives? If they were to go into the museum of Paul Beaudoin, what would Paul Beaudoin want them to see? And so I've created a little PowerPoint template that they can use. Those students have also done videos and have done other kinds of newsletters and things like this to kind of introduce themselves to the class. In my case, one of the examples that I have here is I was a fan of the comic series Johnny Quest, and I learned as I've gotten older that it was about adventure and analytical inquiry. And also I spent my years when I first moved to Boston going to the New England Conservatory of Music, where every day I would pass under this huge watchful eye of Beethoven. And this kind of got me thinking about how serious I should be taking what I'm doing. So these were just little things about my life that I thought the students might find interesting. I think one of the most important areas for me and also for the students is the discussion board. And I've seen over the years many people say, I'm not really quite sure what to do in my discussion board. I can't seem to get students to answer and relate. So I've been thinking about the kinds of questions that have most benefited my classes. And I think the first thing is to create questions that are open-ended, that they're not tied to right or wrong answers. So it gives the chance for the student to sort of synthesize and think through some of the things that they're learning in that particular unit. Having not right or wrong answers opens the door to really what this is all about, and that is discussion, that students interact with each other and also with the teacher so that there's a way of learning collaboratively. I encourage, and yes, even sometimes require, that students respond to each other, so that students are asking other questions to other students. Perhaps another student brings up the point of view of something, and I want that student to be questioned. Well, why do you think this particular thing? And I find that once students begin asking each other questions, boundaries start to fall. And it's much easier for students to feel a sense of community. I think probably the hardest thing for most online students is they feel isolated and alone. They're working perhaps in their room or in their kitchen or some space, and there's not the physical sense that people are around them engaged in learning the same thing they're learning. And it's that sense of isolation I think that the discussion board can really help kind of destroy. I'm just thinking, for example, last summer I taught a class in music appreciation, and two women discovered that they both had their due dates in the same week in August. So they were taking a class, and in part of learning about music, they were helping each other while they were getting close to their due date, and they developed a quite wonderful and warm relationship. Create posts that allow students to explore their own responses. I find oftentimes discussion boards are more rewarding when I let the students process their own thinking about a situation, a piece of art, or a particular kind of aesthetic. If the student begins to think and write, they begin to learn what I want them to learn. It's a chance for them to articulate in a way what they really do know. And I find that open-ended questions really help kind of expose that. And then well, of course, ask students to create questions in their posts so that other students are asking them questions. I don't, for example, since I teach music and art, I don't ask them to use the word like or don't like, because those are kind of vague. I want them to explain why. And perhaps another student will say, but I really love that, and here's why. And so this kind of engagement can be really, really informative and really helpful for students. And again, make them feel like they're not alone in this world. Here's an example of a recent discussion board. You'll see the first one is the Museum of Me. This class had 24 students. Everyone participated, and in this particular setting, 185 posts to this. The next one was about finding a piece of music that they enjoy and to try to explain those elements that they were learning. Fewer students participated, but still quite a number of responses, 133. So, of course, you're probably thinking, do you read all those responses? And the answer is yes. I read every single one of them, and I respond to most of them. I think it's very important that the student know that I'm in the class with them, that they can't just sit alone and write whatever they want and think that they are engaged in learning. I come back and I say, well, this is great, this is not so great, did you think about this, did you think about that? I don't try to sort of push them in a direction of learning. And I think it really helps them realize my teacher is really watching me just like he or she would watch me in a classroom. And it keeps them on point, I think, and it really, really helps them. It does take a little bit of time, but I also have another thing that I've developed, and that is how to time manage your online classes. But online teaching is not just sit back and let the students do it. You've got to participate at the very, very least. And I think the discussion board is a great way to build a community and to build kind of relationships with your students. Another icebreaker that's very, very successful is having your students create goals. For example, ask your students to say, in this, well, it's like writing a New Year's resolution. This semester I want to learn or want to accomplish X, Y, Z. And so by the student articulating these goals, they're setting expectations for themselves. In a sense, it's just like setting that New Year's resolution. The intention is, I want to accomplish this. But you now are privy to these intentions. And so you can go and you can help support them. You can tell them, oh, what you want to learn about is coming up in chapter 9 or 10. Or perhaps even they want to learn something that you haven't thought of. And so maybe you want to find a way to work that into your discussion board or into one of your lectures. So understanding what the students are kind of hoping for can also be a great way to let them know that you're paying attention to them, that they're not just out there on the web getting ready to look at their next email or Facebook post. So goal setting, I think, is a great way for students to sort of get focused on what they want to learn. Oh, the water cooler. You know, I think the most important place in any business or school is the water cooler. I think more work and more information gets passed around at the water cooler than any other place. So I've often set up a water cooler area in my discussion board for students to talk about anything they like. I allow them to post anonymously. They can talk about anything. It doesn't even have to be about the class. I try not to participate at this because I like them to feel comfortable that whatever they say isn't going to have any kind of influence. But I've never really had a problem with this. But this water cooler area is a great way for people to share information about new experiences, maybe concerts they've been to or lectures they've been to, ways of thinking about getting through the class. But I find the water cooler to be kind of a very helpful way, again, for places for students to build a sense of community. Students love to be online. We know this from having them check their Facebook pages, their Twitter accounts, their email accounts. One of the things that I want them to accomplish is to realize that the web is a minefield of information. So another kind of icebreaker that I've developed is what I call the digital scavenger hunt. And this is a scavenger hunt that I did for a music class that I did with American popular music called From Woodstock to the iPod. And here are 10 questions that I want them to kind of go on the web and find out this information, but also come back with this information with web links, perhaps portals of information where they found this. I want them to use the information that they find on the internet as a way of thinking about what they're about to learn in the class. Teach them with the digital scavenger hunt that they can go to look at the New York Times online, that there happens to be video artists out there dealing with all kinds of things. So the internet becomes, in a sense, a library, a resource for them to learn, really. That's why I do the digital scavenger hunt. So here's another question. I would allow my students an opportunity to decide what they would like to learn in my class. How would you feel if students said, "Oh, Paul, I really want to learn XYZ." Would you welcome that? Would you not welcome that? Or would you kind of think about it?
Hi, Paul. It's Lauren. Wow, people are responding. There was 2 questions that came up in the chat.
Great.
The first was from Nikki, and it was back when you were talking about the discussion board and posts. She asked, do you expect response posts to all classmates or a few?
I often tell them at least 3. This way here, I know that they're not just picking on somebody they've known from a previous class, but sort of finding new people to collaborate, new people to learn. So at least 3, but I find that students more often than not will go beyond that. Some are overcompensating and will answer everybody.
Got it. Great. And then we had another question from Marion, who wants to know, before you had talked about your time management tricks for online classes, and I wasn't sure if you were going to share those at the end. If not, she was interested in learning more about those.
Yeah, actually the time management is a whole kind of other workshop that I do, and I'll actually be doing that at the Blackboard World Conference this summer in Vegas. So if you're interested in knowing about time management, you can see those tips and tricks there. Or at the end of this presentation, you'll actually find my email address. You can write me, and I will get back to you about that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paul. And I just published the results to the whiteboard. Great.
I see, for the most part, you would be willing to introduce what the students want to learn in the class. That is a real change, I think, in the online culture that I've seen over the last 5 or 6 years. It used to be, this is what I teach, this is the syllabus, this is what we're going to learn, and as I think people are becoming more comfortable in the online environment, I'm seeing more and more people open to the possibilities of what do students bring to the table, because they have learned across their lifetimes. They do bring things to the classroom. And of course, in the online world, I'm finding more and more what people call alternative or adult learners who come with really valuable experience, and to allow that in the classroom is just, it's really terrific. So I'm happy to see that. So now comes the middle of the semester. This is when the very beginning and motivation start to dwindle. People will have other things that seem to come up to be more important, family responsibilities or drudgery from another class. And so we have to now work a little bit harder to keep our students with us. And I find there's something, at least, that works very, very well with me. I love incentives. And I'm hoping that my students also love incentives. I find lots of ways to create kind of small goals of achievement for my students. And I'm going to show you some of these interspersed with some other ideas that I have. But I think instilling a bit of competition, a sense of getting ahead, of motivating, is a really great way to get your students kind of continuing that fire. You know, in our digital world, we have zeros and we have ones, and everybody wants to be a one, and nobody wants to be a zero. So this can oftentimes be very valuable in a class. I have introduced activities like crossword puzzles and word searches and jigsaws in puzzles into my class. And for the longest time, I really kind of fought this idea. I thought doing word searches wasn't really learning something until I made one and I started doing it myself. And I'm just curious, you know, I should have done another poll question. I'm wondering how many people now are searching for one of these words in my word search puzzle. If I'm vocabulary building, I can imagine a student going polyphonic, polyphonic, polyphonic. Where is polyphonic, polyphonic? This repetition that really helps them get that word into their mind is a real learning element. So I found that word searches and, again, jigsaw puzzles, I do one of the seating chart of the orchestra, where do people sit, crossword puzzles with vocabulary and techniques and strategies. Games can be a terrific way that almost feels non-pressured. I oftentimes give little rewards for the student who does the best score the fastest time, and I'll oftentimes publish them in a discussion board post, someplace to kind of make them feel like they've accomplished something. So I hope all of you have found at least one word in this word search, but let's go to the next thing.
Hey, Paul, quick question.
Yeah.
What software or technology do you use for the word searches?
Yes. Sure. Well, okay, I'll come back to this slide. This slide and most of my games are done in SoftChalk. I should tell you that almost everything I do in my classes, I do for free. I find software on the web, but there are two pieces of software that I can't live without. And when we get to the end of the presentation, I'm going to show you 4 things that I can't live without and 3 resources that you can turn to for even more ideas. So if you can hang on, you'll see. But this is done in SoftChalk, and it integrates quite well into Blackboard. But there's hundreds of places on the web where you can build crossword puzzles and word searches. I don't think so much for jigsaws, but it all depends on what you kind of want to accomplish. Does that help?
Yes, I think that works.
Okay, great. I do a lot of traveling, and I talk about lots of different places in the world. So recently I've developed a kind of where in the world is Paul? And what I've been able to do is I've gotten in touch with our marketing department here at Fitchburg State, and I've asked them to donate what I call bling, because who doesn't love bling? Bling is those little things that they always hand out, little pencils or pens or book bags or baseball caps or whatever they have. Almost always the marketing department has leftovers from some event, and they're always trying to find ways of getting rid of them. So I thought, what a great way to not only sort of get rid of the baseball hats and the pens, but also kind of instill a sense of pride for the student who wants to win something from the school. So what I've done, maybe this now goes back to earlier this year, I'm wondering how many people would know, I was actually in Florence, and I took photos of 2 places. On the right you'll see is the famous dome of the Cathedral of Venice. It's something that I've talked about in my classes, so I want my students to identify that, and when they correctly identify it, they win something. And on the left, also in Florence, is a plaque that sits in the middle of the square, and you can see on the bottom of the plaque I've placed a pen. It's a pen that's emblazoned with the Fitchburg State University logo, and so if students can tell me the importance of this, then they can win the pen. And it's really kind of fun to see how students are really geared up. I'm going to win the book bag, or I'm going to win the grocery bag, or I'm going to win the baseball hat. And it becomes quite competitive. But again, it's about sort of engaging the students in the class, but also reinforcing other things that they've learned in the class. These aren't just sort of fun places. They're places that I've talked about, so there's a resonance between the contest and what they're supposed to learn. I love to do mid-semester surveys, and the survey tool in Blackboard is a fantastic tool that allows students to answer anonymously some really specific questions. So if you find enthusiasm, if you find motivation kind of waning in your class, it's absolutely okay to find out why. And there's lots of ways I can do this. There's lots of things that I've discovered. For example, sometimes people are having technical troubles. Maybe they're Apple users, maybe they're PC users, maybe they're not quite sure about the streaming media. So let's find out about these technical challenges that they're having and get them pointed in the right way. I want to ask my students, do you think you're going to finish the midterm by the time it's due? My classes have no specific deadlines, but we find that there's a rhythm the class takes. And so by the middle of the semester, I want to know, if you're driving your boat, are you close enough to the midterm that you'll be able to finish on time? I want them to know if I'm responsive to their emails. When the students, I actually have kind of OCD when it comes to email. I love email, and I always reply, usually within 5 minutes. It's kind of scary. But I want my students to feel like at any point they can email me and they're going to hear from me. I want to know, do they like the activities that they're learning? Do they like the word searches? Do they like the games? Do they have any ideas what might work better? Again, I want to learn more about, this is a great opportunity for them to kind of go a little bit deeper into a particular subject. It's a great way to find out what are students interested in. I've been asking, since my classes are often also taught face-to-face, why did a student choose my class to be taken online? And this can be very revealing, and I'm learning there's some very specific reasons why students are turning to the online environment. But it's also helpful for me to know how to design for the next semester to take advantage of those reasons why a student wants to take an online class. And sometimes it's fun to just ask a silly question, like, if you could have dinner with a famous person, who would it be? And why would you choose that person? You know, it seems like an unimportant question, that it has no bearing really on the course. And that might very well be true, but it has a significant bearing on how the student feels about the professor. Hey, the professor wanted to know who I would have dinner with. So he or she is kind of interested in knowing my point of view, knowing my opinion. This can go a long way into fostering that kind of encouragement to continue in with the class. So it's a kind of give and take, and I find that this mid-course semester survey really, really valuable and terrific tool. By the time the midterm comes, I actually send out a 2-page newsletter to my students. I actually got this tip from participating in the Blackboard ECP MOOC that happened last, I think, May. And an English professor out in California showed me his newsletter, and I was, this is terrific. I would love my students to get this. It's graphically attractive. It tells them information in a way that I think is much more powerful than an email. Students don't like, oh, it's coming to the midterm, you better take it by this point. Let's do it up in a visual way that offers them a kind of creative and engaging way. It's just a terrific thing. And I use Microsoft Word for this. Believe it or not, what you're looking at is a family Christmas letter template. If you have Microsoft Word, you can find newsletter templates. Look for the one that says Family Christmas and begin to kind of sculpt it so that you're using the graphics and the verbiage that you want to use. But I find that students are really receptive to this. And, you know, if you're having technical issues, I just love this guy throwing his computer out the window, because who doesn't feel like that every once in a while? But again, if a student is having these issues, let them feel like there's a way out for them, that they don't have to quit. They can actually get it solved, and the class becomes more meaningful. And at the end, again, I'm always telling students where they can email me, having them get a sense that my teacher is always available for me makes a world of difference. I love Voki for fun reasons. I have a virtual TA. In my world, I would never have a TA. It's just not going to happen. So I go to Voki, which is a free web-sourced animation, I suppose, and you can click on male, female, monster, any number of kinds of things. You can give them a voice, and you type some kind of message. And so what do I do with this? In that discussion board post, if a student has a question about something and I don't feel like answering it as Paul, I'll give that question to my TA. But it's also a wonderful chance because as we know, or as I know, TAs don't always know the exact right answer. So I always find ways to make my TAs a little bit kind of funny or a little bit silly or a little bit turning it around so that the student has to work just a little bit harder to get the exact answer they're looking for. I really encourage this. And again, Voki is free, and it gives you a web link that you can post in Blackboard. You can see a student asks a question, and the TA can write, click here for my answer, and they'll be taken to a website where your little graphic animation will tell them what you want them to hear. It's actually a lot of fun, and students love this. I find that the more I can relate what happens in people's real lives to what's happening in the classroom, that the learning becomes more enriched. So I'm always trying to find ways to bring the real life or current events into my classroom. And so here, recently, people were kind of astounded at this particular winning streak. And so just how probable or improbable is this winning streak? So it's a way of connecting a kind of this sports event to a mathematical idea. Hey, how likely is it that this is common or not so common? So it's a nice way to kind of resonate, hey, what I'm learning in my class isn't divorced from what I experience out there in the so-called real world. This, for me, is really kind of important. Let your students know that they stand out. Send a student an email when they've done a really nice discussion board post, or they've done really well on a quiz. For example, here's a student maybe that's been getting 70s, and all of a sudden they're getting better grades. I'm going to congratulate them, but I'm also going to kind of ask them, gee, I noticed that your grade went up significantly. What are you doing that helps you achieve this higher score, right? So it's a way of me kind of understanding what's going on. But don't let them know that they stand out just because they're doing great. Let them know they're not standing out, that they're standing out because they're not doing so great. They've fallen behind on taking their quizzes. They're not posting discussion boards. Hey, I noticed you're not doing X, Y, Z that I think everybody else is doing. What's going on? And I think this little personal touch really helps the student say, wow, my student knows, my teacher knows what I'm doing. And I think knowing that they're being watched, knowing that there's somebody who really cares about what they're doing in this class makes a huge difference. So I think letting them know that they stand out is a really valuable thing. Let's have some Merlot. Yes, indeed. As much as I can, I bring in outside resources to help my students realize that what I'm talking about isn't just about me, but it's a lot of other people. With the web, we have the ability to offer our students lectures and demonstrations from the world's greatest minds, organizations, research facilities. It's just phenomenal, the amount of web media that's out there that you can bring into your classroom. And Merlot is just one of these places. Again, it's a free site. You have to register for it. But it's a fantastic place to find ancillary lectures, or perhaps maybe even primary lectures. Maybe you can find an expert on something that you're not so expert about and bring that into your class. You can find these things on YouTube. You can find them on National Geographic, the UNESCO World Heritage Site. I mean, there's hundreds of resources where you can go to find media to bring into your class, no matter what it is that you're teaching. So, now that we've gone past the middle, how motivated and engaged are you? I can't wait to work these ideas into my course, or, hey, well, you make it sound so easy. Or, none of these will work for me. Terrific. I'm seeing lots of can't wait to get these ideas into my class. That's very exciting. And, well, you make it sound so easy. You know what? It takes a little bit of effort, but once you've expended the effort, it gets really easy. And it's kind of nice when you start seeing the students responding to the kind of effort that you're putting into the class, because the effort that you show will only be returned with the effort that they show. And I find that this kind of mutuality can be really, really, really helpful. So great. So now here we are at the end of the semester.
Paul,
generally,
go
ahead.
One quick question that just popped up from
Sure.
Nikki. She was asking, who does the tech troubleshooting for you or with the students, and what seems to be the turnaround time for tech problem solutions?
Okay. Two things with tech. First of all, I think most students will come to me first with tech questions. I think because my classes are so media heavy, they're going to turn to me first to find out why their machine isn't working. And generally, they're simple solutions. Because I've been doing this for a long time, I've actually created an FAQ page, a page where students can go where they'll say, I can't download ABC, and I give the answers for their solution. So for the most part, I find that I'm the first one to get hit. The next place actually is their classmates. If you've been able to develop a kind of community within your class, students are going to ask their other students, how did you do that? And I find that that is a very fast and easy way for students to get answers. And when push comes to shove, I send them to the help desk here at school. Fitchburg has a terrific help desk and technology center. Students can give them a call 24/7, or they can just walk in if they're close to campus. Turnaround time, I follow up within 24 hours. Did you get your thing fixed? And if so, great. And if not, show me a screenshot of what's going on. So I try to tackle those tech issues pretty fast. Does that help?
She said, yep, it helped. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, great. All right, so here we come to the end of the semester, and students here now are motivated, but I think oftentimes for the wrong reasons. It's, we got to get out of here. I need that A. I haven't done anything all semester, but you get all those kinds of excuses. But there's ways you can kind of push that off a little bit. And so here are some things that I do. Just like they get a midterm, about 2 weeks before the class ends, I send them what I call the end is near email. And I just love this graphic because you just don't want to come down to what this is. And this, again, like the midterm, tells them what they should be doing, double check what work needs to be done, complete discussion board posts, let them know when the actual last day of classes are. The newsletter, they're familiar with it, they enjoy receiving it, and it's just another way of kind of giving them that information that they need before the class finishes. I also like for students to kind of find a way to close the class. So this is a particular strategy that I learned from Kurt Bonk, a professor of instructional technology at Indiana University. He has suggested, and I love this idea, students to take one word to describe this class. And I find that this is a wonderful way for students to think about what have they learned in this class? What one word would they use to sort of sum up their experience in this online learning environment? And I've had some terrific answers over the years from my students doing this. Another thing you can do is have a student write a letter to the student who's going to take this class next semester. I find this to be a really nice way to share with a new batch of students kind of what other people have been on this road. And so here's something that they want to share with you about this class. So this end of the semester letter to the next student, I think is just a really warm and human way to let somebody else know, I've been here, and here's what I've found helpful. I think students find it fun, and I have to admit I find it fun too, for students to create a top 10 list. These happen to be the top 10 of things that are good I also do a top 10 list of things that are not so good. I don't share that too often. But here I want to know, for students, what really stood out for you? And we get everything from the way I interact with them to the fact that I don't stand as an authority figure, that they don't like having, they like having opportunities to take the quiz. But this is kind of a nice way for me to know sort of what's going right in my class, and it's, to me, oftentimes much more informative than the sort of mandated evaluations that a lot of schools give out where they have to fill in kind of bubbles. I think ending a class is also very important. People develop relationships, so how do you say goodbye? I've actually created on our discussion board a place for students to tell other students, gee, you've been really helpful for me. Some people do a kind of Hall of Fame, but here people can link a poem or a YouTube video or a song or just something that they want to share with somebody that they have felt has gone and built a relationship in their class. And it's just a nice way to kind of say, yeah, we're at the end of the road. So two choices, right? You can have your 67% dropout rate like the dean said, or you can kind of point the way towards success. The pointing the way towards success means that you've got to be engaged, you've got to participate. And these little strategies that I show, I hope will inspire you to get with your students and kind of get them to that end of the finish line so that they too feel like this has been a terrific experience. Here are the things that I can't do without. And again, in a couple of slides, you'll see my email address. So if you want a PDF of this, that would be great. But there's the address for Voki and for the one-word cartoon that I do. I find my use of Snagit in Camtasia to be quite heavy. That's a pay program, although Snagit is a lot like Jing, which allows you to screen capture images. I believe Jing is free. SoftChalk is a terrific software package that will help you accomplish a lot of things, but again, that's something you have to pay for. So if you don't have the money, you can't use it, right? As simple as that. Some of these ideas are unique to me, but look, I've learned just as much on the web as all of my students. So if you are really kind of gunned up and want to find even some more ideas, look at John Bean's terrific Engaging Ideas, which is really about kind of writing to learn and finding ways to engage your students with that. Kurt Bonk, Empowering Online Learning, this is my indispensable handbook. He has such terrific ideas on what he calls the R2D2 method, the read, reflect, do, and display. Just terrific ideas about getting your students involved in active learning. And Rita Marie Conrad's great book, Engaging the Online Learner. Terrific ways to get your students engaged and even rich with other strategies and techniques that I think you'll find helpful. And, you know, I've said it before, but I love email. And so if you're curious at all, you can always email me. This is my Gmail address. If you want a PDF of this presentation, I can do that. I also know that Blackboard will be archiving this and posting it to their Blackboard TV portal on the YouTube website. I hope that this has been really helpful and that you have felt inspired to find ways to sort of motivate and engage your students. And thank you. I'll just hang out and ask me questions. Thanks, Lauren.
Hi, Paul. No, thank you. This has been great. We did have a few questions, and I think a few more are coming in, so I will just start at the top. Gail wants to know, what is the retention rate for your online courses?
Gail, I would say I'm shocked if more than 3 people don't finish my classes, ever.
Great. And then Guy is asking if you have a Twitter handle or Google+.
Well, I don't have Twitter. I do have Google+, but I don't let my students in on Google+. I'm not quite sure why Guy's asking if it's personal or for the class. One of the things I truly believe is that my students aren't my friends, and that's something that I talk about in my time management. So maybe, Guy, if you want to shoot back with a little bit more specificity.
Guys, so feel free to expand on that. If not, you can also reach out. Oh, Paul, or Guy said it's for him. He just wanted to hear more about your great ideas. And I think Paul said you are free to email him also, Guy.
Yeah, the address should be up on the screen here.
Yes. So thank you. I've seen some comments. Great. Feel free to keep posting in your questions. If not, there was a question about if we will be handing out the slides. We will be sending out the slides later this week with the recording link so you can pass along to your colleagues. And thank you so much for attending, Paul and I. And again, we'll be on here till noon. If you have additional questions, we will be able to answer them. And just a reminder that next Monday is the next live BIT session about organizing your content. And that session is at 1 p.m. Eastern. So Paul, we just got a question from Marjorie. She's asking, why do not use a textbook ever? Isn't it a lot of work?
You know, is it a lot of work? In the beginning it's a lot of work, but in the end it's not a lot of work. I find it very interesting to have students, for example, again, I'm teaching music and art classes. I love for them to compare performances. You know, when you hear a piece of music by, let's say, Justin Bieber or Britney Spears, that piece is always the same. But if I play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony with a different set of conductors, that piece can seem very, very different. I find all the graphic images are available on the web. And so rather than having to spend what tends to be close to a couple $100 on music and art books, I find that the web can be it can be useful. But if I continue about the more work, one of the things that all my classes have are study guides, so that each learning unit has a list of names and concepts and terms that the student uses to fill out while they're listening to the lectures or doing their online research. So instead of highlighting in a textbook and just sort of running their marker through the book, they physically have to write down definitions and write down terms and physically go to some place in the web space to find the information. And I find that once they're active, they learn by doing, right? So once they start doing something, their ability to retain that goes way past the 15 weeks of them being in my class.
And Paul, Guy was asking another question about
Sure.
copyright issues with content from the web. Not sure if you wanted to field that. Also, I think Misty also is knowledgeable about copyright issues as well.
Sure, absolutely. In fact, you should email me because there's something called the TEACH Act. The U.S. has outlined some very clear guidelines of how media can be used in the classroom situation. The way I interpret it is if I feel comfortable playing a media in my classroom in a face-to-face environment, because my online class is in a kind of secured environment. For example, the only people who have access to my class are the students enrolled in my Blackboard portal. As long as that media is shared within that Blackboard portal, then it's okay. One of the things that I do is on the announcement page, I have a permanent thing that says that, well, first of all, that all the lectures are copyrighted by myself, and that any media used during this course must be destroyed 5 days after the final exam. So it's a way, oh, terrific, yes, thanks, Misty, for bringing that up. I think that's a really helpful place to go and do a little research. Copyright remains a very sensitive issue. I think we're all sensitive about it. But I think as long as we are sharing that in what I want to call a closed classroom situation, even though we are on the web, the portal is still closed and accessible only to those who are in that class. I think you should be okay. But I'm not a lawyer. Otherwise, you know, I might have a different feeling. Welcome, Guy, and thank you, Misty, for that link.
Great. Thank you. And I see a few others typing. And Misty just posted in the chat, said stay tuned for more information about Explore in Blackboard. It will further address copyright issues and concerns in that content curators and contributors can use Creative Commons to assign copyright. And we should be having an Explore presentation probably in the fall. Explore is a learning object repository that Blackboard is coming out with, and I think it is set to be released next month. So more on that to come.
You know, if you feel, I think oftentimes just letting the student have the web link too can be helpful, so that rather than you're bringing the media into your Blackboard portal, if you just sort of point to where they should be looking, I think that that's another way to kind of share without feeling in danger.
So thank you everyone for attending today's session. I'm seeing mostly comments now in the chat with many thanks to Paul and the presenter. So thank you, Misty, and thank you, Paul. We are grateful for both of you for helping us with this initiative, and we hope that it's been proving very informative for all of you who've been attending. So feel free to jump off, everyone. If anyone does have a last question, I'll be hanging on. But if not, we will see you next week. Thank you.
Yes, thanks everybody. It was great.